Announcements none. Papers have been laid. Questions?
Mr. Speaker, I have submitted the following private notice question to the Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness, whether in regard to the 10 recent fatalities amongst patients undergoing dialysis at the new Suivez Hospital, as well as one other patient undergoing dialysis presently critically ill, he will state if he will order a full-fledged independent inquiry into all the circumstances surrounding same.
Mr. Speaker, sir, before replying to the PNQ, with your permission, I wish to convey my sincere condolences to the bereaved family of the 10 dialysis patients and others who have passed away during the month of March and April 2021. Chaque mort est une de trop. I make an appeal to all members of the House to show and to pay due respect to the deceased and their families. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to express my gratitude to all our frontliners who are working relentlessly during the COVID-19 resurgence period for the prompt and efficient management of COVID-19, thus allowing the country to curb the curve of the pandemic. Let me start at the very outset to give a broad picture of dialysis services in the public health sector. Presently, there are 1,579 patients undergoing dialysis treatment, with 1,285 patients in the government hospitals and 294 patients in the private clinics with which my ministry has a service agreement. Transport facilities to and from the dialysis centers are free of charge to all dialysis patients. Dialysis patients undergo free dialysis sessions weekly as per medical prescription. Each dialysis session lasts for 3 to 4 hours. Dialysis facilities are provided free of user cost to all patients requiring the treatment. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me now come to the specific case of dialysis patient in New Suivez Hospital Dialysis Center and to inform the House that I do not intend to order any inquiry for reasons which I will now elaborate. Mr. Speaker, sir, the dialysis unit at the New Suivez Hospital is in operation since 2012 and is equipped with 16 dialysis machines where around 90 patients undergo their dialysis treatment. The staffing as at March 2021 comprised 1 nephrologist, 1 anesthesiologist, 3 medical health officers, that is 2 at the Suivez Hospital and 1 at Tamasa Hotel, 2 anesthetic nurses, 2 ICU nurses, 1 charge nurse, 4 dialysis nurses, 7 nursing officers, 3 healthcare assistants, and 3 attendants. I wish to point out that all the above personnel are specialists in their respective field and undergo regular training through continuous medical education and are fully committed to their duties, especially in those difficult and special circumstances where they have had to leave their respective families for weeks to cater for the needs of the dialysis patients. The staff I have referred to work as a team for the betterment of the dialysis patients and devote their whole time to these patients in accordance with evidence-based international guidelines. Mr. Speaker, sir, during the outbreak of COVID-19 at the dialysis unit at the New Suivez Hospital, a total of 87 patients were undergoing dialysis at this unit, and 3 patients were admitted at Jawaharlal Nehru Hospital for other medical problems. On Friday, 26 March 2021, it was reported that the PCR test done on the eve of 1 female nursing officer posted at the dialysis unit at the Suivez Hospital was positive. The public health measures, as per the established protocol, were enforced. Concurrently, appropriate measures were taken to ensure the continuity of medical care and treatment of all our patients. On the same day, as soon as the above report was received, all staff members working in the dialysis unit were isolated and had their PCR test done. Following the screening, 7 staff members were found to be positive for COVID-19, namely 2 doctors, 1 charge nurse, 3 nursing officers, and 1 attendant. The above staff who were positive were admitted at ENT hospital. Mr. Speaker, sir, on that day, that is on 26 March, dialysis patients were therefore not conveyed in our transport from their residence to the dialysis unit for their treatment. However, 6 patients came to the New Suivez hospital by their own means. PCR tests were done for those 6 patients, out of whom 3 were COVID positive, and they were admitted at ENT hospital on 26 March for treatment, and the remaining 3 who were COVID negative were quarantined at Tamasa Hotel. All other dialysis patients undergoing treatment at New Suivez hospital were also quarantined in Tamasa Hotel. Patients in quarantine at Tamasa Hotel who requested for their relatives to stay with them as companions were given the permission to do so, provided they accepted to sign an undertaking form. There were 14 relatives who stayed with their respective patients. It is to be noted that the cost of the room for single patient is 32,000 rupees for 14 days of quarantine, and cost of the room for room shared with relative is 54,000 for the 14 days of quarantine. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to inform the House that Mauritius is one of the rare countries which isolates all COVID patients. In most countries in Europe and in America, there have been numerous outbreaks of COVID-19 in dialysis units. There has been no attempt to isolate these patients in quarantine centers. Patients are self-isolated at home and travel to and from the dialysis center by organized transport. Hence, there is a high risk of further spread of infection to the rest of the community in these countries. In Mauritius, in order to protect the community, the protocol is to quarantine all contacts of COVID-19 cases and to isolate all COVID-19 cases in a treatment center. This applies to dialysis patients also. All standards regarding dialysis treatment have been adopted and maintained. All dialysis patients continue hemodialysis at the same original center so as to minimize the risk of contamination to other centers. Mr. Speaker, sir, the whole of the New Suivez hospital, including the dialysis unit, was closed in order to allow for complete disinfection to be carried out over 24 hours, as from Saturday 27th to Sunday 28th March, and all dialysis treatment were rescheduled accordingly. Concurrently, all other dialysis patients of New Suivez Hospital were screened, and 12 were found COVID positive on 28 March, making a total of 15 patients, COVID patients, positive. All positive patients who were admitted at ENT hospital were sent back to the isolation ward at Suivez Hospital for treatment and to continue their dialysis sessions at the above hospital as from March 28 in the afternoon. From 26 March, that is the day 0, to 9th April, that is day 14, which corresponds to the incubation period, as from the first detected case of COVID-19, 39 COVID-positive patients were admitted at New Suivez Hospital. 1 additional patient was tested.
The Speaker. Last week, Honourable Minister gave all this information last session. The question is specific about a much-needed independent inquiry. There are people dying at the moment, as we speak, or critically ill. I would expect the minister to have some respect for these people and to address the question, not give us information that is already given last session, Mr. Speaker. Time is running out.
Let's hear the minister.
Mr. Speaker, this question is addressed to all those patients. We have to give this information. At no point in time last week, I've given the detail. I'm answering a PNQ. The public should be made aware of all the facilities, all the treatment that have been provided to all these patients. I will continue, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Given
Unfortunately,
the nature of this question, the very solemn nature of this question, that you will give additional time.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'll continue. Unfortunately, of those COVID-positive dialysis patients, 3 passed away, 1 passed away on 9th of April, 2 passed away on 11th of April due to COVID. 4 COVID-positive dialysis patients passed away on 29th, 31st March, 29th March, 31st March, 5th April, and 11th April, and were declared dead with other comorbidities as cause of death, that is ischemic heart disease, chronic renal failure, cardiac arrhythmia, chronic renal failure as primary cause of death, respectively. Another patient passed away last night, that is on 19th April, at New York Hospital with cerebrovascular accident as the cause of death. Mr. Speaker, sir, 2 negative COVID patients who were in quarantine in Tamasa Hotel passed away. 1 patient passed away on 29th March due to chronic renal failure, and the other one passed away on 7th April due to cardiac complications. On 4th April, 2 dialysis patients at Tamasa Hotel were confirmed COVID positive and were admitted at Suivez Hospital, followed by 2 more dialysis patients on 9th and 1 more on 11th April, who were also confirmed COVID patients. As of date, there are 31 COVID-positive patients at New York Hospital. All the COVID-negative dialysis patients have been discharged from Tamasa Hotel, and 10 dialysis patients have passed away, out of whom 2 were COVID-negative. 3 patients passed away due to COVID, and 5 COVID-positive patients passed away due to other comorbidities. Mr. Speaker, sir, as regard to the medical coverage, the 3 doctors were posted at the quarantine center to look after all patients in quarantine at Tamasa Hotel. 1 doctor accompanied the patient for their dialysis sessions at New York Hospital on a daily basis.
It is all given last week. I can tell you 1 nephrologist, 2 other doctors, they accompanied the persons to and from. All this was given last session, Mr. Speaker.
That you know, I have no
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm answering to this question. And all the information I'm giving is related to this PNQ. I'm not going out of subject. 4 more doctors, including 1 nephrologist, 1 anesthesiologist, and 2 medical health officers were posted at New York Hospital to look after patients who were PCR positive and who also required dialysis treatment. In addition, 6 experienced dialysis nursing officers who were called from other dialysis units of different hospitals were posted at Tamasa Hotel Quarantine Center to look after the dialysis patient and also to provide their dialysis treatment sessions at Suivez Hospital. 6 more nursing officers were posted at the New York Hospital to look after the patients who were COVID positive and also to provide their dialysis sessions at later hours. During the late hours session, 2 additional dialysis nurses were posted to look specifically after the COVID-positive patients. Arrangements were made for all patients to have their dialysis sessions at Suivez Hospital. Moreover, 2 imaging technologists and 11 hospital attendants were posted thereat to provide support services. It is to be noted that these staff members had to stay on a roster at the hospital during a period of 1 week, after which another team took over. All patients tested positive negative undergo earlier dialysis treatment scheduled between 7 hours to 20 hours, and those patients who are positive for COVID are having their treatment at later hours, that is after 21 hours. The staff were fully equipped with personal protective equipment, which were renewed after each dialysis session. Mr. Speaker, sir, as regard to the diet for the patient in quarantine center, it was reported by some patients that on the first day of quarantine, they did not have an appropriate diet according to the medical condition. Arrangements were made for one dietitian of my ministry to advise daily on the diet for the renal patients so as to cater the patients at Tamasa Hotel. All protocols for cleaning and disinfection of the whole units, as well as the dialysis equipment, were done in between each dialysis session with appropriate and recommended disinfectant to prevent the spread of the virus. All consumables used for each dialysis session for each patient were disposable once for single use and only for one-time use. Mr. Speaker, sir, cleaning and disinfection of dialysis units and equipment are done in accordance to strict protocol, which includes the following: cleaning the floor with sodium hypochlorite solution. The dialysis machine are equipped with auto disinfection program, which is mandatory and is done after each dialysis treatment with sterilizing solution. Hot auto disinfection is also done on daily basis using recommended sterilizing solution. Surface cleaning of the dialysis machine and other equipment is done by usual special solution. Fumigation of the room is being done daily at night after all sessions are completed. Furthermore, all staff and patients are always instructed to abide to all sanitary precautions. Mr. Speaker, sir, I will now come to the transport arrangement made for the conveyance of dialysis patients, stressing on the fact that Mauritius is one of the very rare countries providing such dialysis facilities to its dialysis patients from their residence to the dialysis centers and back. From 28th March 2021 to 11th April, 2 15-seater vans and 1 ambulance were posted at New Suyak Hospital for the conveyance of dialysis patients. For each session, 13 patients could undergo dialysis treatment. Each 15-seater van was conveying 6 patients at a time, so as to cater for physical distancing during the trip from Tamasa Hotel to Suyak Hospital and back. The dedicated vehicles conveying staff and patients from Tamasa Hotel to New Suyak Hospital and back were equipped with a transparent plastic screen to separate the drivers from the passengers. For the period 12th April to 17th April 2021, the number of transport for dialysis patients was increased to 4, with 1 additional 15-seater van. Mr. Speaker, sir, our doctors are keeping themselves abreast of the evolution and scientific evidence since the beginning of the pandemic, in line with good medical practice. The nephrologists are kept updated on the scientific developments in the field of nephrology in relation to COVID-19. Specific treatment protocols have been elaborated for the care and management of dialysis patients well before the resurgence of COVID-19. Literature reviews show that the prognosis of dialysis patients infected with COVID-19 is unfortunately very poor. Depending on various studies, the mortality rate is 20 to 35%. For instance, a large multicentric study published by Journal of American Medical Association based on 65 dialysis centers show a mortality rate of 34.5%. In Australia, where a stringent quarantine protocol applies, there have been 7 fatalities out of 13 dialysis patients infected with COVID-19. Similarly, in the UK, out of 6,488 COVID-positive dialysis patients, 1,338 have passed away. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would have preferred not to draw such comparisons, but we know the schemes of the opposition. Mr. Speaker, sir, Having said so, these figures refer to human beings, and behind every statistics, there is a person and a life that matters. The fight goes on, and our aim remains to save every single life. Hence, Mr. Speaker, sir, I do not intend to carry out any inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, sir, at the start, I would like to offer my sincere condolences to all the deaths and the people who have suffered, people who died, recognize the efforts of the staff, but I will also say, Mr. Speaker, I consider it my moral duty that light be shed on the deaths of these 10 persons and the people who are critically ill at this moment. I will start, Mr. Speaker, by tabling a copy of a report published in the Lancet, which shows that Mauritius is the worst country in the world, with the highest death rate for kidney disease in the whole world. I will table that, Mr. Speaker, as to show that there should be no room for self-satisfaction. I will ask the first question, Mr. Speaker, concerning vaccines. 424,000 vaccines had been received by the time of the outbreak in New Suivez Hospital. Yet not one single person at that hospital for the dialysis had been vaccinated. And I will refer, Mr. Speaker, to what he said in his PNQ, that the Minister said in his PNQ of 23rd March, the vaccination programs for senior citizens and patients with comorbidities was put on hold, was stopped, and the vaccination program was targeted to persons with work access permits. Therefore, I ask Mr. Speaker, who and why were instructions given to stop vaccinating these highly fragile persons? Why, against, Mr. Speaker, WHO guidelines of 13th November 2020? Who and why were these instructions given, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'll first come up with the first information that the leader of opposition has said, that he has shown a document from Lancet. Mr. Speaker, sir, in our country, all patients who had a kidney problem is given the possibility, the chance of having dialysis at all costs. In other countries, it's a selected group of people that is given the chance to do dialysis. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me explain. In other countries, those patients who will get a donation, a renal donation, they will be given the chance to do dialysis. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, sir, concerning the vaccination program. Yes, the ministry, the government has decided to give vaccination for comorbidities as a priority. But at the same time, we had the confinement. During the confinement, what is our advice? Our advice is to protect people, to protect those people who are vulnerable. They should not be allowed to move out. This is the protection we have given. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the vaccination, the ministry has already in the beginning offered the chance for all cardiac patients and dialysis patients to get vaccination. But the vaccination program is a voluntary one. It's a voluntary program. We can't force people to get the vaccination. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, thirdly, a vaccine doesn't act immediately. It takes 4 weeks to develop the antibodies. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I also wish to highlight the House that 63% of our patients have been vaccinated. Acceptance was low in the beginning, and even some refused to do the vaccination.
Mr. Speaker, no serious effort was made by the ministry to vaccinate, hence zero vaccination at New Suivez Hospital. He stopped it and started again in confinement because he knew it was a disastrous policy to stop. Mr. Speaker, I'll ask now about healthcare workers. Dr. Musango, bless him, of WHO, said in October 2020 the infection rate amongst health workers is very high. You have to be careful in case of resurgence of COVID. Why was there no routine PCR test done with any of the health workers working at the hospitals in Mauritius, especially the new Suivez hospital? And this lady, Mrs. Sanasi, she went of her own volition, not feeling well, to get a test. This was not a routine or even a procedure by the Ministry of Health. Why were you negligent in that way?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'll first come up for Suivez Hospital. At a time when you have personnel have been infected, they all have to move in quarantine as our established protocol. And in quarantine, we can't do vaccination. Similarly for the patients. All patients, whether they are tested positive, they are in treatment centers, or they are not tested positive, they are in quarantine. So they have, those who are in quarantine or suspect cases, we can't do vaccination at this point. This is the expert advice. At the same time, when Dr. Musango said the infection rate from that time in October was very high, no recommendation was given that the PCR test should have been done routinely on the staff of the hospital. The leader of opposition is getting it very wrong. Mr. Speaker, sir, the first and the most precaution that should be taken is wearing the mask. The wearing the mask is the most important and not the PCR test. Even if you do the PCR test at this time, the PCR test will give you an information for the past. But what is more important is how you put in place the barrier measures, how you use the mask, how you do sanitization. This is most important.
No.
Mr.
You
Speaker,
don't have
sir,
the floor. You don't have the floor. As simple as that. Please, quiet. Quiet.
Mr.
Continue,
Speaker, sir, this is a recommendation that all health personnel, even all the public in general, including the honorable leader, they have to use. It's not the test that is the first, the primordial, it is the barrier method.
It's okay now. We've understood your meddling. Mr. Speaker, why then on the 29th of March, he has issued himself, signatures could have issued a circular to all hospitals to ask them to have routine PCR tests. C'est la mort après la tisane, Mr. Speaker. This is the whole point.
Put your question.
And he's trying, Mr. Speaker.
No.
I'm
no
very
debate.
okay.
Put your question. You must
Why
be
is the minister fuddling the issue when he's talking about vaccines? I am talking about vaccination before the pandemic at New Suivez Hospital. That is when he did not vaccine one single person there. I'm asking why. Don't answer me.
Okay, no comment. Okay. Why?
Mr. Speaker,
Okay, sorry.
I'll come back with the PCR test. Obviously, when in three of our institutions we have doctors, we have personnel that have been infected, it's important at this time to do routine tests. And again, in the future, it's not only routine tests that have to be done.
This is threatening. I'm just advising. This is threatening. Mind well. Nobody should talk if he doesn't have the floor. This is standing order. I show it to the population, to the chamber and the population.
Mr. Speaker, sir, Honorable Mohamed used to poke in between whenever there is a question from the Honorable Leader of Opposition. Mr. Speaker, he should be taken to task because he can't be. He's been doing that for months. We've been watching her. And this is the word.
Order! Order! Order!
I will answer my questions.
Order!
But-
there is only one leader of the opposition.
Honorable
There was
members,
another one, he's not here.
I'd like to ask the Honourable Minister, this is what has shocked independent nephrologists most of all, is that 2 patients died at Tamasa Hotel just after having their dialysis sessions, Mr. Speaker. And this reminds me of what Mr. Honorable Ivan Kolambandu said in the paper on 10th April 2021, sir. He said, Jimoun papumo or COVID mais or mauvais dialyse. Here I am asking the Honorable Minister, why has he had an inquiry to see why 2 people, otherwise healthy people, died under his watch,
You made your point.
just after the dialysis sessions?
Let him give the reply.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'll again come up with the question that was put to me about the dialysis patients. Have they been vaccinated? 7 patients from Suivez Hospital went for vaccination before the outbreak on their own because this was what was issued from the ministry, that patients, dialysis patients and cancer patients have to be vaccinated. But vaccination is a voluntary element. And we have to understand that patient has been doing it on voluntary purpose. Now, secondly, about what the leader of opposition has said on the 2 patients who have passed away. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is not time for me to give all the details of those patients. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rely on the doctors who have been treating these patients. I rely on the nurses, on the health professionals who have been treating these patients. Before coming to dialysis, most of the patients has a long history of medical illness. And these doctors, these nurses, they know their patients very well. They know who are very critical, who are very vulnerable, and they know what they have been doing for these patients. I'm not going to comment because this is very sensitive issues for those patients. I have all the respect for those patients. We are not going to have a discussion on the mode of how was the death happen, but at the same time, it is very shocking, Mr. Speaker, sir, that people die before, after, and during dialysis, and unfortunately, this has become the debate of the day. This is what I wish to say, but Mr. Speaker, sir, rest assured that the ministry has taken all the information about those patients. We have studied it. The doctors have seen whether the proper treatment were given to those patients who have passed away in the dialysis, in the quarantine centers, and we are all satisfied that those patients, wherever, in whatever condition they have passed away, we have seen that the doctors, the personnel who have been doing their job, they've done a fantastic job.
Speaker, the Minister has not listened at all to what the people in Tamasa have said. Nevertheless, I will come back to it in the press conference. I would like to ask the Minister concerning his statement that he will not have any medical inquiry. Let me ask him whether he is aware that one family has already submitted a complaint for medical negligence during the weekend. Whether he is aware of that, stating the basis for the complaint, whether he's aware of that, and whether he's also going to ignore this family's complaint.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Ministry of Health receives every month more than 2 to 3 complaints. And these complaints, there is a procedure. The procedure is the Ministry of Health receives the complaint. First is wherever this patient being treated in the regional hospital, there is an internal inquiry. The report are sent to the ministry. The ministry will send this report to an independent inquiry, that is the Medical Negligence Standing Committee, chaired by an independent person with all the 3 doctors who are involved into that. They will do their inquiry. They'll come in a report. The ministry will rely on the recommendation of the report. This is how the Medical Negligence Committee work, and all the alleged negligence or all the complaints are treated in the same way. We have been, and after that, the report will be referred to the Medical Council for another investigation, and if there need be, the Medical Tribunal also will conduct an independent report, an independent inquiry. These are the procedures, Mr. Speaker, sir. We are only following the procedures. All patients who are having a complaint will not come to the minister. We'll follow the procedures. and procedures, whether it should not come to my office, because this is for the proper governance. The complaint should be dealt with the officer responsible. It's not that the minister should interfere into an inquiry. This should be the answer that I wish to give.
Table copy of the letter with the permission of the family, copy of the letter of complaint. And I must say I'm not surprised that the minister doesn't agree to an inquiry on himself, on his own incompetence. So, Mr. Speaker, I will now come, and this is why I wanted to ask a question to your boss. Now, Mr. Speaker, as far as psychological torture is concerned, Mr. Speaker, he gave the impression that from the first day everything was fine. In fact, it took 6 days, up to April 2nd. I think there were some interventions by his colleague for him to realize the dramatic situation at Amasa. Let me say, Mr. Speaker, sir, psychological torture. People were put by themselves the first 6 days.
Question about that.
Let me say whether he's aware of it. Is he aware that people were there 6 days without TV? And in fact, not 6 days, the whole time, without TV, without phone line, without internet. And the first 6 days, no possibility of being accompanied by anyone. And they needed the support of their loved ones. And so many people died, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, sir, quarantine period is not difficult for one. It's a difficult time for everyone. But we have to safeguard life of others. These are public measures. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me remind Honorable Leader of Opposition that in the beginning, when we first have passengers to be quarantined, at that time, we did not have a single hotel. At that time, we managed by the buildings provided by the Ministry of Social Security. We managed to keep Mauritius safe by using all our means to get it. It's at a later stage that we start having hotels. Mr. Speaker, sir, for quarantine, for me, for himself, is a difficult period to stay 14 days in a room. I understand this. But at the same time, why are we doing this? It's only to save the life of the person who's been quarantined, not to make him infect others, and at the same time protect the families. We are doing everything in terms of accommodation, in terms of facilities being given at the quarantine centers. But Mr. Speaker, sir, with all that we've been doing, we have been to all the quarantine officers, all the staff working in those centers, they've been up to the level because they have been delivering, and that's thanks to them that we've been able today to keep people in quarantine, and that has helped us to curb the curve, that have helped us. Today, 1 month back, we have a number of cases in the local community. And these are the procedures that we should highlight, that we should do. We should make people aware of why we've been doing quarantine. I understand it's a huge psychological impact, but we have to go through that. And this is the only way. By doing so, we've been able to curb the curve. We've been able, for the last 1 week, to have hardly 1 or 2 cases in the population.
Mr. Speaker, locking people up by themselves in a room, 24 hours, without TV, without internet, without a telephone line, is doing everything, Mr. Speaker. Not at all. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Honourable Minister about contagion.
Order.
He's doing everything
Order.
About contagion.
Time is almost over. Put your question. Put your question.
I'm putting my question, Mr. Speaker. This morning, there's an article in the paper to show that the procedure at the new Suivez Hospital, as far as dialysis, is being completely changed après la mort l'artisan, with separate machines for positive and for negative patients. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that these persons were in perfectly good health. Fathers, mothers, grandmothers, wives, husbands, breadwinners. And they came and they were quarantined or they were put at the hospital and they found their death, Mr. Speaker, sir. So I'd like to ask Honourable Minister, why is it that so long after they caught the virus at the hospital, now only, he is realizing that there should be social distancing, that there should be cleaning, perspex, etc. I'm going to table, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to show.
Don't make any
I'm
debate.
going to
Put
show
your question.
a
Time
picture,
is over
Mr.
by
Speaker,
almost 10
of the
minutes.
van where there was absolutely no social distancing on the 29th of March. Why is it only now, Mr. Speaker?
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'll come back with the question of lockdown. We've locked down people in the quarantine centers. Mr. Speaker, sir, these quarantine centers, why do we quarantine? If we have to allow everybody in a quarantine center, there might be more than 300 persons who are quarantined. So we let everybody mix with each other. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me reply.
Leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honorable Leader of the opposition.
He is refusing
This
to...
is interrupting.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Order.
Why should we have a quarantine if we have to allow everybody to move?
No cross-talking. What is happening here?
And again.
You are doing that. You are throwing the paper. Please. You don't have the floor. Time is over. Prime Minister's question time. Let me first make the announcement. PQB 225 will be replied by Dr. the Honorable Minister of Health and Wellness. PQB 229 will be replied by the Honorable Minister of Land Transport and Light Rail, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade. PQB 231 will be replied by the Honorable Minister of Financial Services and Good Governance. PQB 242 will be replied by the Honorable Prime Minister, time permitting. So, Prime Minister's question time, Honorable Amiamia.
It's B217.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed by the Acting Commissioner of Prisons that 9 out of 12 penal institutions are equipped with a total number of 1,000.
So what is happening each time a minister or prime minister is replying, there's disturbance in the house, and these people go in the press and say we need decorum, parliamentary democracy. This is here where we have to have parliamentary democracy. On what point of order?
Bobby Ariam called me bouffon. Quite loudly. Did you hear that?
Did you? Wait. Order. If the Honorable Bobby Aram said that word, please withdraw that word.
No, Mr. Speaker, sir, I didn't say anything.
Mr. Speaker, I have
Order.
I have raised point of order. You have the recording.
Order, please.
You have the recording. Please listen to the recording at lunch, and you will know who said it. I was looking at you, and I heard it there. Obviously, I cannot look there and hear you.
So,
if you will kindly hear the recording at lunchtime and find out who said it. Please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is a very good way of doing things. Prime Minister.
May I continue? Let me start again, Mr. Speaker, sir. I am informed by the Acting Commissioner of Prisons that 9 out of 12 penal institutions are equipped with a total number of 1,320 closed-circuit television cameras. Of these, 454 are presently defective in the following prisons: Central Prison 1, New Wing Prison 1, Petit Verger Prison 3, Women Prison 84, Eastern High Security Prison 365. The CCTV cameras at the Central Prison, the New Wing Prison, and the Petit Verger Prison are defective due to technical problems which occurred during lockdown of this year and have already been reported to the contractor. However, in order to keep our prisons a COVID-safe area, interventions inside these prisons have been stayed. The CCTV system, which was installed at the women prison as far back as 2013, is outdated, and the maintenance contractor is unable to repair it. Tender was launched for the rental of 110 CCTV cameras last year. The contract has been awarded on 3rd of December 2020 to Mascarin Suppliers Limited for a period of 5 years at a monthly rate of 60,000 rupees, excluding VAT. As at date, 60% of work has been completed, but has had to be stopped due to confinement in the context of COVID-19. Again, to keep the prisons COVID safe, the workers of the company are not being allowed inside the prison compound for the time being. The company has indicated that it will take 2 weeks for the remaining work to be completed. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to the 365 defective cameras at the Eastern High Security Prison, I wish to refer the Honourable Member to the reply I made to Parliamentary Question B452 at our sitting of 4th of August 2020 on this issue. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to point out that the Eastern High Security Prison was, since its construction, in a very bad state, more specifically the CCTV system. Under the construction contract, Prisons Department was bound to sign a maintenance contract for 5 years, that is from January 2016 to December 2020 with the contractor. Although several interventions were effected during the first 2-year defect liability period. The maintenance contract was signed on 10th of February 2016, but by June of the same year, 73 cameras were already not operational, hence undermining the good running of the prison. This shows, Mr. Speaker, sir, the poor quality of work which had been done. Since Prisons Department could not do otherwise, it had to continue to rely on the services of the contractor and the failing CCTV system, which went from bad to worse. By the end of December 2020, some 278 cameras were defective. The system was installed at the initial cost of 29 million rupees for 254 cameras, but due to its inadequacy, the numbers had to be increased to 544, bringing the total cost to 63.1 million rupees. This shows again, Mr. Speaker, sir, the poor planning that was done. The project, which started at a cost of 1,491,686,781 rupees and 53 cents, culminated to 2,134,890,869 rupees 13 cents. Presently, out of the 544 cameras at the Eastern High Security Prison, 365 are defective. The contractor effected a survey from 5th October to 7th of December 2020, following which it restored part of the system and carried out maintenance free of charge. On 4th of March 2021, the contractor submitted a report and a quotation for the sum of 10,655,281 rupees and 80 cents to fully restore the system. However, in view of the non-cost effectiveness of the repairs, it was decided to revamp the whole analog CCTV system and go for the rental of new digital CCTV system. Financial clearance was received on 1st of April 2021 to proceed with the rental of 450 CCTV cameras at the Eastern High Security Prison for the sum of 6 million rupees on a yearly basis. On 16th of April 2021, tender was launched on the e-procurement system for the rental of 450 CCTV surveillance cameras at Eastern High Security Prison with the option to upgrade. The closing date for submission of bids has been scheduled for 17th of May 2021. Mr. Speaker, sir, the use of CCTV cameras, a key element to security, makes a positive contribution to the safety of staff and detainees and reduces the risk of abuse. However, they are not complete without the services of prison officers. Hence, although the CCTV system at the Eastern High Security Prison is not fully operational, security of the prison is not compromised as both general duties and PSS officers are being deployed at strategic points. Regular patrol is carried out both inside and outside the institutions by both vehicular and officers on foot patrols. In addition to armed sentries on the watchtowers, dog handlers with dogs regularly patrol the inner and outer perimeter of the prison compound. Two-way radios are also used by officers to communicate, and they remain in contact with the Central Control Room Center. Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard to Part B of the question, I am informed by the Acting Commissioner of Prisons that the Prisons Department complies with the provisions of Section 21 of the Data Protection Act relevant to the retention period of the data. The video footages are archived for a duration of 60 days. The system thereafter automatically overrides the old ones to make room for new footage. However, if the footage had to be reviewed to investigate specific incidents, then any extracted footage could be retained for the purpose of that investigation and also to be used as evidence where required until investigation is concluded.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it's a real concern that 67% of the camera in a high security prison is not working. And this issue has been criticized by the Director of Audit down the years, even in his last report. But is the Honorable Prime Minister aware for images from operational cameras, that is a rest that is working, images from operational cameras were not recorded and not stored on an acceptable period? This defeats the whole purpose of having cameras if it's not recorded. And I said, this was mentioned in the Director of Audit report. Has this issue of working cameras not being able to record has been dealt with since the report has been issued?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is not only that some of those cameras were not working, and since from day one, there are some DVRs also who are not working properly. And it is obvious that if they are not working, they would not be able to record footages. But as I have said, these have to be now, we are reviewing this situation. We have been trying to review in the past, and we are reviewing, and therefore there is a tender, and we are launching this tender for rental of new cameras.
If I understand from the Honourable Prime Minister, the whole previous system which has not been working, which have been so many problems down the years, this is being revamped completely, and there will be a new system that will be in place at Melrose Prison.
Yes, in my answer, I said that on the 16th of April 2021, a tender was launched on the e-procurement system for the rental of 450 CCTV surveillance cameras with option to upgrade. I think the closing date for the submission of the bids has been scheduled for 17th of May. So we'll see.
Speaker, in its report, the Director did mention that a government asset register was introduced in 2017 to keep track of assets from acquisition to disposal. And 25 million rupees have been dispersed last 3 years. And as at now, nothing has been done according to the Director of Audit report. That is, there is no government asset register. So can I ask the Honourable Prime Minister if he is aware of this issue and what has been done?
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, this question relates to CCTV surveillance cameras in the prison. If the Honourable Member will come with a specific question with regard to this, obviously, I will provide the information.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Prime Minister mentioned that 9 out of 12 of our penal institutions are equipped with CCTV camera. Will he please inform the House if there is any plan to mention the other 3 with CCTV camera?
Well, I must find out. Obviously, we have the Correctional Youth Center. Again, with regard to this institution, a tender was launched for the rental of 42 CCTV surveillance cameras on the 9th of April 2021. The closing date for the submission of the bid has been scheduled for 5th of May 2021. I understand that provision also have been made for the financial year 2022-2023 for installation of CCTV surveillance system at the special prison for women and for Rodrigue prison. And on 28th of October 2020, Brinks Mauritius Limited was awarded a contract to install 19 additional cameras on a rental basis at the Phoenix prison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, apart from the staff manning the control room, may I know from the Honourable Prime Minister who else can have access to the control room?
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, given this critical role that the control center, in fact, plays in the daily operations, access to the control room is obviously restricted only to authorized personnel. And I am informed that even these control rooms are also under CCTV surveillance to monitor the movement of the prison security staff that are working therein. And therefore, obviously authorized personnel are those who have been designated to work and to man this system.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Can we know from the Prime Minister how many officers do work in the control room?
Well, there are officers of the Prison Security Service who obviously have to be conversant. They are being given a special training to man the CCTV surveillance system, and those are the ones who are posted. They work on a roster basis, and at any one time, I am informed that there are at least 2 officers who are on duty and present in the main control room. The staff posted are responsible, obviously, to supervise the daily operations of the prison. And I must also point out that the system is operational on a 24-hour basis, such that the responsibility of managing and monitoring night operations reside entirely with the control room. I am also informed that these control rooms are normally manned by a team of at least 10 dedicated officers in the grade of prison officer and lead prison officer. So, as I said earlier, these officers work round the clock, and there are at least 2 officers each time.
Can I ask the Honorable Prime Minister whether body cameras to prison officers are being considered, considering that sometimes there are sudden breakdown of the surveillance system and no proofs of what has been reported so many times about brutality in prisons?
I didn't get the question, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Cameras to prison officers are to be considered to avoid sometimes the sudden disappearance of and breakdown of specific cameras in prisons. Body-worn cameras.
Oh, body-worn
Body-worn cameras by prison officers.
Well, this is a suggestion which obviously will be considered.
Honorable David.
B218.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Cargo Handling Corporation Limited is a state-owned enterprise solely responsible for handling general and containerized cargoes. Handling of containers in the harbor involves a number of operations, and different types of specialized equipment are used for each operation. For instance, for the core operation of loading and unloading of containers onto and from vessels to the quay, ship-to-shore cranes are used, tractors and trailers are used for conveying containers from the quay to the container park, and vice versa. Rubber tire gantry cranes are mobile gantry cranes used in yard operations to stack or load containers onto trucks for delivery. A reach stacker, which supplements the rubber tire gantry cranes operations, is an equipment used for quick transportation of containers on a very short distance for stacking in the container park. As regards part A of the question, I am informed by the Managing Director of Cargo Handling Corporation Limited that the company owns 11 reach stackers, out of which 5 are 21 years old, 4 are 13 years old, and 2 are 5 years old. 3 of the reach stackers, which are 13 years old or more, are beyond economical repairs and would need to be disposed of. From the remaining fleet of 8 reach stackers, there are presently 5 which are grounded for repairs since September 2019, September 2020, October 2020, November 2020, and January 2021, respectively, and are awaiting provision of spare parts which are not readily available on the market. In fact, their spare parts are procured with much difficulty from overseas. One reach stacker is expected to be repaired by end of April 2021, and the remaining 4 by end of June 2021. I am also informed that the Cargo Handling Corporation Limited has already launched tenders for the purchase of 3 additional reach stackers. Mr. Speaker, sir, As regards Part B of the question, I am informed that Cargo Handling Corporation Limited has not borrowed any reach stacker recently to ensure a minimum continuity of its activities. The 3 reach stackers currently in operation are responding to the needs of the organization, although from time to time they may sustain temporary breakdowns which are attended to by the in-house workshop. I am also informed that while waiting for the availability of spare parts for repairs, the Cargo Handling Corporation Limited conducted a market survey on 19th of November 2020 through a restricted bidding exercise for renting of reach stackers from a selected list of users of the equipment around the port area. The purpose of the survey was to be aware of availability of reach stackers in case of absolute necessity. As at closing date of 20th November 2020, only 1 response was received. So far, the Cargo Handling Corporation Limited has not felt the need to have recourse to renting of reach stackers to ensure a minimum service continuity of the corporation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I understand that out of 8 reach stackers, 3 are operating and compensating the work of non-operational ones. May I know from the Honourable Prime Minister whether the average delay in the release of containers and goods has been quantified as a consequence of this lack of handling equipment?
No, I am informed that it is not because there are only 3 stackers that there is delay. There can be delay because for other factors, but not because of this lack of stackers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Honourable Prime Minister inform the House when the tender was launched for the 3 stackers?
I think I did say in my answer. So the tender was launched on the 15th of April and the closing date for submission of the bids is 15th of May, 2021.
Let me give the question to Honorable Danu first and then to you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. In his answer, the Prime Minister has mentioned about the tender and everything. Is there any equipment replacement plan based on the future projection of business level at the Cargo Handling Limited?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir, I understand that management of cargo handling has already worked on a business plan 2021-2024, highlighting all the major investments that Cargo Handling Corporation Limited needs to embark into over that period to lead the way to nurture the transshipment business through obviously improved service. The business plan 2021-2024 is geared towards the planned investment in state-of-art yard equipment, as well as focuses, amongst others, on the other major focal points, which will help sustain a level of service deemed of a modern port.
Thank you. Honourable Prime Minister, how can the Cargo Handling Corporation achieve the objective to position our port as a regional hub in preparation for the Paramax era, when in 2015 we had 9 operating stackers with much less traffic compared to only 3 in 2021?
Well, as I say in my answer, the stackers are there to supplement the handling of containers. There is the RTGs, which are in fact handling the containers from the container terminal park to be loaded to lorries and trailers for these containers to be delivered to wherever, I mean, whichever company has to take delivery. So, as I say, these stackers, they are not as if the machines that are doing only handling of containers. There are the RTGs, but obviously I am informed that the three, for the time being, are doing the minimum service that is required. The others, as I have stated in my answer, are going to be repaired. Probably by June, we should have more stackers in operation. And there is already a tender which is launched for acquiring 3 more stackers.
Thank you. Can I find out from the Honorable Prime Minister, regarding the maintenance of the stackers, can you confirm whether Cargo Handling has an in-house maintenance team, whether they're fully operational or it's just closed down? Because I understand that the Cargo Handling employ a technical manager as well as a maintenance engineer.
Well, I have answered to say that there is an in-house team that normally repairs those equipment that are stackers that breaks down. Now, there are, unfortunately, certain spare parts that are not available due to the old age of some of the stackers. And they have to be ordered, and it takes time. And in fact, searches have to be made to find out where those spare parts are available. That is why it does take some time before they are able to be repaired. And some of them are beyond, I'm told that some of them are beyond repair. So that's why we need to purchase additional stackers.
The table has been advised PQ B221, B222 have been withdrawn. Time over. Question time. I have to announce that the table has been advised that PQ B257 will be replied by the Honorable Vice Prime Minister, Minister of Local Government and Disaster Risk Management. Honorable Lakshman Roy.
B233.
Mr. Speaker, the resurgence of the COVID-19 pandemic has once again disrupted our way of living. Being fully aware of the impact that this pandemic has had on our citizens, especially on our youngsters, my ministry has devised a series of online activities for them. These activities are meant to keep them active, focused, and entertained. With your permission, I'm tabling a list thereof.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Would the Honourable Minister inform the House of the online platforms being used for such activities?
We are using all the different digital platforms. For instance, the Facebook page of my ministry, the website. So these are the different platforms that the youngsters can use to participate in the different activities. We will be also having, like, you know, Mr. Speaker, entrepreneurial courses, and this will be on the Zoom facility.
Thank you. Some countries, like Spain, have had to do an assessment on the mental health of the youth in the short term and in the long term because of confinement. Is the Minister envisaging to do the same for our youth in Mauritius?
Mr. Speaker, I don't know if I think that this does not fall under the mandate of our ministry. However, maybe my ministry can collaborate with the Ministry of Health and come up with such a suggestion.
Next question.
B234.
Mr. Speaker, sir. I am informed by the Traffic Management and Road Safety Unit that following a survey carried out in connection with the precarious road conditions along the Bernardin de Saint-Pierre Street, a series of traffic and road safety measures have been implemented thereat as follows: painting of slow road markings and stop lines, fixing of stop traffic signs, installations of 5 pedestrian crossings together with associated traffic signs and road markings, and provision of 2 raised tables along the Bernardin de Saint-Pierre Street. Sir, I am informed that the TMRSU has worked out a series of measures in order to alleviate traffic congestion at the junction of the Bernardin de Saint-Pierre and the A.R. Mohamed streets along, also commonly known as La Croisée Vallée des Prêtres, which consists of, firstly, a link road to connect the Bernardin de Saint-Pierre Street with the Military Road. 2 options were proposed, firstly to connect to an existing truck road and then finally connecting to the Military Road, and secondly, the setting up of 3 traffic lanes during morning and afternoon peak hours as from the junction Military Road and Mohammed Street up to junction of A.R. Mohamed Street to Cité Laval Street. This measure would increase the traffic volume entering Port Rich towards Gaddafi Square during the morning peak hours and thus would help reduce traffic congestion at junction Bernardin de Saint-Pierre and A.R. Mohamed Streets. However, the second measure proposed was not favorably considered by the police authorities, as it would have required that all on-street parking be banned along the Route de Pamplemousse Street during morning peak. I am also informed that the police had written to the Ministry of National Infrastructure and Community Development about traffic problems along Route de Pamplemousse and had requested to look into the possibility of constructing additional road connections from Vallée des Prêtres towards Route de Pamplemousse due to reasons mentioned below. Vallée des Prêtres has only one access exit road, namely Bernardin de Saint-Pierre. The locality has over the years witnessed an influx of new residents with the setting up of numerous morcellements and concurrently a soaring population as well as an increasing vehicular traffic. Thirdly, according to the police, such state of affairs has worsened the traffic problem along Route de Pamplemousse, which is the only main road connecting to Vallée des Prêtres. And fourthly, in the absence of development in the road network, the situation will become unbearable in the near future with vehicles moving bumper to bumper. According to the RDA, there are no short-term measures as such which can be implemented to relieve traffic congestion at Vallée des Prêtres Junction. It has also informed that the construction of a new road will have to be addressed by way of a full-fledged feasibility study given the site constraints. The RDA has advised that a detailed traffic study be conducted by the TMRSU to identify the most appropriate solutions. The TMRSU is presently looking into the matter. Mr. Speaker, sir, a committee will be set up comprising my ministry, the TMRSU, the RDA, the Minister of Housing and Land Use Planning, and the Municipal City Council of Port Rich to look into the possibility of providing bypasses between Military Road, Route de Pamplemousse, and Bernardin de Saint-Pierre Street. A modeling exercise will then be carried out to assess the viability of any bypasses identified. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to thank the Honourable Minister who has given me a chance to enlighten the House about this issue and also who has raised the question at adjournment time in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Honourable Minister mentioned about setting up of a committee. Can he give us a time frame about when the committee will be set up?
This is a burning issue, I realize, Mr. Speaker, sir. The point is that all the traffic measures that had to be taken has been taken by the TMRSU. Now, the point is to set up this committee, including the different stakeholders I just mentioned, the answer is to look into the possibility, the solution is to look into the possibility of providing bypasses between Military Road, Route de Pamplemousse, and Bernardin de Saint-Pierre Street. So I can assure the Honourable Member that the setting up of the committee will be done as soon as possible.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, this issue I have raised in the House, I can say, for more than 10 years now. It's a very long outstanding issue, And as the Honourable Minister rightly said, there is no short-term solution. There must be a master plan so that we can address this issue. But in the meantime, can I ask the Honourable Minister if he can see to it that the only way to ease the traffic is to post police officers there in the morning and in the evening. It's the only present solution, if we can say, that can help to alleviate this problem.
I asked the question to my officers, Mr. Speaker, sir. This is a very pertinent question. I was given to understand that this is being done, perhaps not on a regular basis, but I will see to it that this proposal of the honourable member is adhered to.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. Can the Minister state the areas around which the study took place? As my honourable colleague, Honourable Lejonga, chaired numerous meetings with all the stakeholders, as the traffic congestion is a real problem in my constituency. So it takes from Terre Rouge roundabout till Vallée des Prêtres, La Croisée Vallée des Prêtres. So I think there's more like 30 lateral roads, and then it causes a bottleneck effect at around the La Croisée Vallée des Prêtres. So my question is, would the Honourable Minister consider to put maybe a traffic light also to alleviate the situation?
Mr. Speaker, sir, the honourable member is right. Vallée des Prêtres is a highly populated area now, and the Vallée des Prêtres junction is congested at peak hours. There are many lateral roads. But I will leave it to the technicians who will form part of this committee to decide upon the modalities of how to proceed with the study with the hope that we will get a solution as quickly as possible.
Yes, B235.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I am informed by the Central Electricity Board that on 17th December 2019, bids were invited for the procurement of 6 high roof containers to be used for training purposes at the Centre de Formation et de Perfectionnement Professionnel of the Central Electricity Board at Terre Rouge. The contract was awarded to Beau Digital Limited for the total amount of 2.3 million rupees, exclusive of VAT. The letter of award was issued to Beau Digital Limited on 15th April 2020. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Central Electricity Board has informed that following a press article on the 23rd of February 2021, which referred to the above-mentioned procurement exercise, the Internal Audit Department of the Central Electricity Board initiated an investigation into the procurement of the containers. The Internal Audit Report, which was submitted to the Central Electricity Board on 30th March 2021, had highlighted some disturbing elements in the procurement process leading to the award of this contract. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have requested that an independent committee be set up to look into the matter and situate responsibilities in case of malpractices and irregularities.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I must say I'm relieved to hear the answer of the Honourable Minister that an inquiry is being initiated at the level of CEB, because in fact, according to my information, the containers were first being bought by Niti Select from Velogic, who fabricate the containers, and then sold to Beau Digital, who in turn sell it again to CEB. So my question, I don't know whether the Honourable Minister would have this information. Why is it that CEB did not buy the containers directly from Velogic? Why has there been a middle company? Because we all know what happened when there is a middleman, a middle woman rather in this case, we know exactly what happened.
You already put your question.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. I have taken note of what the honourable member has stated. It is for certain reasons that I have requested to the Central Electricity Board to set up an independent inquiry, because based on the internal audit report, we've found out that there were some irregularities, and the independent committee will look into all that.
May we find out from the Minister, since when is Budge Digital registered as a supplier to the CEB?
I don't have that information with me, Mr. Speaker, sir, unfortunately.
Thank you. May I know from the Honourable Minister, when has he informed CB of the requirement to set up this committee? When will this committee be set up? And whether the person going to chair that committee has already been designated?
Mr. Speaker, sir, it was last week that I advised the Central Electricity Board to set up the committee, and it will be for the Central Electricity Board to appoint the person who will chair that committee and its members, and it will be for the Central Electricity Board to define the terms of reference of that committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Honourable Minister inform the House how many bidders were solicited for the supply of these containers, whether Budge Digital was among the solicited bidders?
No, Budge Digital was not among the solicited bidders.
Last supplementary.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I won't dwell further into the detail, but just one information I would like to give the Honourable Minister, because my question is, the answer that the Honourable Minister gave to the House is that one container costs 383,000 rupees. Is he aware that Velogic, and I must correct, does not fabricate the container, imports it at the cost of 50,000 rupees? So it was sold more than 6 times the value of the container. Is the Honourable Minister aware of this issue?
Mr. Speaker, sir, it is for this reason that I've stated in this House, following the question from the Honourable Member, that I have advised CB to set up an independent committee to look into these issues that he has raised.
Honourable Juman.
Given that Budge Digital was not among the bidders, Honourable Minister, so how can Budge Digital get the contract and get paid for?
Mr. Speaker, sir, it will be for the committee to see what happened during this tendering exercise.
Time over. I suspend the sitting for 1.5 hours.